Let's now discuss virtualization, how we can use virtualization in almost any course at CCBC. Here is the statement of the problem. The statement of the problem is that the students must perform assignments on their computers, but the students do not have the software that they need to complete the assignment installed on their computers. And the solution is VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. Let's compare, before we talk about VDI, let's look at a typical application. In a typical application, such as Microsoft Excel, where is it installed and where does it run? If you go to a program such as Microsoft Excel and you add 2 plus 2 and we get the number 4, the question is, where is that program running and where is that program installed? And it's pretty obvious. It's been installed on the computer where you are currently running the program, on the local computer. That's a typical application. However, in application virtualization, the definition of application virtualization is an application which appears to be running on a local computer but is really running on a remote computer. A commercial example of application virtualization is TurboTax. TurboTax is a program that helps us calculate our taxes, and there are two ways we can run TurboTaxes. We could download it and install it on our own computer, or we could run TurboTax on TurboTax's website. The old way of doing it would be to purchase the CD and take the CD and install TurboTax on our own individual computer. But the newer way to do it, using application virtualization, is to connect to TurboTax's website and then to run the TurboTax program on TurboTax's web server. And that's an example of application virtualization. The application appears to be running on the user's local computer, but it's really running on TurboTax's web server. A big advantage of that is that the application does not need to be installed on the user's local computer, and it's available from any computer which has an internet connection. Now let's look at VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, at CCBC, where students can perform their assignments on virtual machines. Statement of the problem. The statement of the problem is that the student has an assignment that requires the student has an assignment that requires that the student has access to the program called Visio, which is used for making diagrams and charts. The student plans to use a computer at the Baltimore County Public Library, but Visio is not installed on a computer at the Baltimore County Public Library, and they're not going to let the student install Visio. So the solution is to connect to a virtual desktop which is running on a CCBC server. Here is the diagram. The user sits at a PC at home or at the public library, and then he connects to a virtual copy of Windows 7, which is running on a server at CCBC and which contains the application that the user needs. Let's do a demo. Let me do a demo. To connect, the the Baltimore County Public Library, this computer does not have the program called Visio on it. So what I would do is this. I'll go to Blackboard, and then I will log into Blackboard, and then from Blackboard I will connect to a Windows 7 virtual desktop. And when the user connects, when I select connect to a virtual desktop, it connects us to CCBC, and I type in the username and the password, and then I select the course that I am currently enrolled in. And then now you can see here is the remote desktop window. So any programs that I run in this window are actually running on the remote on the remote computer. Notice there are two different start buttons. If I select the very bottom left start button, I will be starting programs on my own individual computer. But if I select the start button in the bottom left-hand corner of the remote desktop window, then actually I will be starting programs on the remote computer. VDI, the user sits at home or a computer at Baltimore County Public Library, connects to a copy running Windows 7 on a server at CCBC, and that contains the application that the user needs. The way that you can tell that the user is connected to a virtual machine is we have this window here, this separate window that says Remote Desktop, and we can see there are two start buttons. However, if we just maximize that screen, then the user can't even tell that the user is connected to a virtual desktop. If the user starts some program here, Wireshark, for example, the user will think that the user is running the program on the individual computer, but actually it's running on the remote computer. Anything done within this remote desktop window actually happens on the remote computer. So for example, if I go to Microsoft Office and I start, I will see that Visio is available, and now I can start running Visio on this remote desktop and then complete the assignment to make a diagram or a chart, which is part of the Visio assignment. And then I'll exit out of remote desktop. With VDI, the user sits at a PC at home or at a library, connects to a copy of Windows 7 running this over at CCBC, which contains the application the user needs. In summary, in the first half, I discussed the VMware certification, and I specified that the purpose of VMware certification is to enable the student to manage a data center. But the problem is the cost of having a data center for each student to practice on. So we use VMware Workstation, and that allows the user to install multiple ESXi hosts to run in one individual computer. That's how I use VMware virtualization in my particular class. And then VMware can be used for almost any class at CCBC in that it allows users to connect to a virtual copy of Windows 7, which is running on a CCBC server. And this concludes my presentation, and I would now like to open it up to questions and